on this panel, we'll start at the end. We have JC, who is a dad through surrogacy, to sweet little Preston, who is probably running around here somewhere. Next to JC, we have Jamie. Jamie is a 2-time surrogate getting ready for journey number 3. We have Jimmy, and Jimmy has a sweet little baby here as well. Him and his husband have a little boy. Next to Jimmy, we have Kelvin. Kelvin and his husband have twins. Then we have Alyssa, who is a 1-time surrogate getting ready for journey number 2. And then last, but definitely not least, we have Brian, who has 2 beautiful children through surrogacy, and his surrogate was pretty amazing. I'll just say that. It was me! So you can see some of their families here. Surrogacy is fun because I like to always say that it's like online dating, but your husband's with you when it starts. So we all started surrogacy with the idea that you either wanted to have children or that we have children and we really want to give that ability to somebody else. So the conversation started with me with my husband, and he was like, "Are you sure about this?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "Okay, we can try." So you have to do a lot of research. So what I would like to share with you is how some of the dads and the surrogates decided that surrogacy was the path for them. So we will start with Jimmy. Jimmy, if you can let us know how you decided that surrogacy was the way that you were going to build your family and how you had those conversations with your family.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So exciting to be here. I was just actually, we both were in your spot 2 years ago when we started our journey here at Men Having Babies. And I remember, as far as going back, when we first got together, we decided that, eventually we wanted to start our own family. And surrogacy was right for us. And so I remember just kind of scrolling through Facebook on a Tuesday, and an ad for Men Having Babies conference for San Francisco popped up, and I said, "Babe, we gotta go," So I booked the tickets, and we arrived here on Saturday, and we attended the conference, and things started moving really quickly, and here we are, with the 3-month-old. So, it's a really good conference to be at, and we talked to so many people here. We actually met our IVF clinic here, as well as the agency that helped us find our surrogate as well.
Great, thank you, Jimmy. So now we will hear from one of the surrogates on what gave them the idea that they wanted to carry a child for somebody else. So Jamie, if you would like to let us know your desire to be a surrogate, where that came from, and how you brought that to fruition.
Sure. When I was in my late teens, my aunt, who was going through fertility issues, was looking into surrogacy. She went on to adopt. We actually had some family who were having a baby. She was young, and that's the route that she decided to go. But knowing her story and knowing a little bit about the process involved in surrogacy is initially what sparked my interest, if you will. Several years later, we had some family friends who were a gay couple who were interested in surrogacy, and they were they didn't come out and ask me if I wanted to be their surrogate, but they kind of hinted at it. They're still not ready. This was several years ago. So that combined with a good family friend who was pursuing surrogacy, and she was actually, I think, almost through the process. She was getting ready to deliver twins. That's what made me go with the agency that I went with. I decided, along with my husband, that this is something that I really wanted to do.
With surrogacy, if you go through an agency, a lot of times you'll submit this online profile of you and your partner, if you're single, what your life is like and what you do, and kind of trying to sell yourself to make yourself as desirable, because surrogates are in high demand. So you kind of need to make your profile stand out to somebody. And then the surrogate has to do the same thing. So I remember putting things in mine like, me and my husband met working at Disneyland, and I love rainbows and sunshine. Like, pick me. So if we can ask you, Brian, how did you come up with your profile, and how did you decide what type of surrogate you wanted to work with?
God, that's a tough one. I remember submitting our profile, and the agency looked at all of our photos and said, "Don't you have any photos of the two of you smiling?" And it's not that we don't smile, we just hate having our photos taken. So creating our profile. I'm the writer of the two of us, and I would say probably more the comedian of the two of us. So Billy, my partner, was like, this is your job. This is all on you. I'm the sperm donor. You're going to be the writer. You're going to make us fun. You're going to make people want us. You're going to make people want to love us. And then, ironically, it took us quite a while to get matched with a surrogate for one reason or another. But once we did and we met Shelly and Brian, her husband, we were like, wow, they're just like us. Like, this is amazing. And the agency doesn't encourage you to exchange phone numbers or anything until you go into contract. And the four of us were huddling over in the corner, like exchanging text messages and group chatting and everything all at one time. So I think, going back to the whole thing is, the best piece of advice I can give any of you is do what's best for your family and what feels right for you, because our journey was a fairly long one, and we met with quite a few agencies, and none of them really felt like home until CSP in Southern California, where most of the people that worked in the office either needed a surrogate to have children, or they were surrogates and carried for other people.
Thank you. Alyssa, can you let us know what it was like when you wrote your surrogate profile and what brought you to the decision to help a same-sex male couple?
Okay. Well, I was just pretty honest with my application, and I knew Ashley with Same Love Surrogacy. She was my old neighbor, so she kind of told me what to expect going into the application process, and she was really honest with me, and it was really simple. My husband was on board, and I don't remember if he had to fill out anything. I don't think so, but just really simple, and I don't know. It wasn't a complicated application process on my part at all.
If I can add to that, I
Yes.
would say one of the reasons why I selected my couple was because they were very detailed in their answers and their responses to the questions. And I just got this sense of sincerity from them, that these were real people.
Yeah.
I just felt this connection to them because I felt like after I read their profile, I knew them.
Yeah.
So I had read several where it was just one-word answers, and at the end of it, I didn't feel this connection to them or this relatability to them. And in reading the couple that I chose, I felt like these were real people. They were longing for something and they're searching for help. So I would say just be very detailed and just, give us your real selves.
Yeah, honesty is the most important thing in the beginning, so you can pick the people who click with you best. I had a choice as well with Same Love, and I didn't click with him. I didn't meet him personally yet, but just read his profile, and then Ashley told me about Kelvin and Eve, and immediately just from the description, I knew that they were the ones for me and my family, and it turned out to be such an incredible experience.
It is, and I know Shelly said online dating, but we called it online mating. And from the whole process, I think once you get in the room with your surrogate and her husband, you know right away, they know right away, whether you've lied on that profile that you're writing about, and it is like honesty, I think, is absolutely the way to go.
Can I add something? Be a little more multimedia, just create a video, show who you guys are. It really adds depth to your profile. It doesn't have to be this, well-produced Hollywood feature, but a little minute-long video, with you and your partner, just kind of describing it. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, take it a step further.
I think the number one component of a successful surrogacy journey is communication, and that starts with your profile. So start communicating who you are, what you want, what your desires are, how you see the journey flowing, and what are some things that maybe you don't want. So have the hard conversations up front about not only knowing who you are, but what do you want out of this? Do you want to talk to your surrogate every day? Do you want to know when she starts her period, like Sherman said earlier? Like, you're a room of gay men and you don't probably care for vaginas too much, but you're going to hear about vaginas and uteruses and periods, and when you get past the point of meeting each other and you're in the medical screening process and there's intramuscular injections, and I opened my box and they're like, what do you do with those? And I was like, oh, I just inject myself in my backside. And there was a point in time where I was getting bruises, so I took like selfies in the bathroom of my butt and I was texting it to them because it's like, they should know this stuff. So it's deciding how much contact you want. What do you want the communication to look like? What if something's wrong at 2 in the morning, can I call you, or should I wait until like business hours? Like, what's the deal here? So I was lucky enough to have 2 couples who just wanted to be involved in as much as they could because they're giving up so much control initially. So they're not able to feel the baby move at night. And his crazy children would kick so hard that it would flip me over at night most of the time, and they're still pretty crazy. So, yay. So it's just trusting your gut. Like they all said, talk about what you want, talk about what you don't want. Because when you have those conversations up front, when a hiccup in the road comes, or when you go and your transfer is supposed to be in 3 days and they're like, we might have to push it back, you're not having hard conversations as they're happening. You kind of know how to approach certain subjects with the right people to make sure that you get through it as safe and as honest as possible. So let's talk about egg donors. So dads, share with us what you were looking for when you were looking for the genetic component of your future child. So Kelvin, if you'd like to start on the process of selecting your egg donor.
Sure. So I worked with Same Love Surrogacy as well. And when we had the initial discussion, Jay, he just pretty much said, hey, if you could have what you wanted ideally, what is your dream scenario? And so my husband and I, we talked it over, what type of race, how old, should she be, et cetera. And we finally arrived, we said, ideally, if we could have an Asian egg donor, that would be ideal. Solely because we're a mixed couple, he's white, I'm Asian, and we felt like if it was an Asian egg donor, then our kids would more look like a family, a cohesive family. That was our thought, but genetics, you never know what you'll get. And then so he was like, okay, Asian egg donors are a little bit tougher to come by, but we'll see. 2 weeks later, he sends me a text message, and he was like, I found the perfect egg donor for you. Not only is she Asian, she's Vietnamese, which is my background. And she ended up being the perfect egg donor for us. We got a couple pictures, and then we asked, is she open to meeting in person? And because it was really important for us to meet her in person, just to see who she was like. And she was totally open to it. We flew down to LA, had coffee with her, and then moved forward with the process from there.
JC, would you like to share how you selected your egg donor and what qualities you were looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, I want to commend you guys for being here. You might not have realized it, but you took the very first step in your journey, which is what I call the easiest step. You followed your heart. So applause to you guys for being here. So when it comes to choosing our egg donor, we had a similar stance. We wanted someone who had a similar background to us. We also wanted someone who has a semblance. You look at someone and say, would our baby kind of resemble them and us? Would it be a good mesh? We also wanted to know their background and where they were from and their genetic history. Is there any disease in the family that we should be aware of? So those were some of the deciding factors that we considered. We chose a donor that had green eyes, thinking, of course, our baby was going to come out with green eyes, and it's not the case. Our baby has beautiful brown eyes, and I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. So some of us get stuck on the characteristics, and it's not always the case. But we ended up choosing an egg donor that was Italian heritage. My husband is Italian. I'm Spanish. We wanted some type of cultural connection there. Our surrogate is, as my husband would say, she's kind of like a mix of a Courtney Cox and Katy Perry. Yeah, our egg donor, I'm sorry. So not that image was anything, but that's kind of what she looked like. So we wanted something that matched our aesthetics, if I can say that.
So now we've selected surrogates and we've selected egg donors and we're all matched together. So Brian, if you could let us know, what was your criteria? I guess it was before your embryos were created, but what were you looking for in the clinic that you worked with, and what was your qualifying questions to ask your reproductive endocrinologist?
That's a tough one because I'm the nurture and Billy is the nature. And I just have to go back to the egg donor. Literally, I just want to say, like, if you, culturally speaking, my partner's Jewish, and we didn't know, we went down a road of like, should we choose a Jewish egg donor? And talk about hard to come by. And if you want to have a Jewish baby, we found out that the egg donor and the surrogate need to be Jewish. So we were like, whoa, how are we going to do that? So instead we chose a different egg donor. We met Guy Ringler, who is here and on the board. We were highly recommended to him by a bunch of friends that had gone through the process, both gay and straight. And really, I mean, it was just kind of like, all the normal questions you ask about, the process, success rates, genetic testing, all of that. And he was just, I felt like he was such an exquisite doctor that, I mean, we just went in and he just told us everything, and our jaws were kind of on the ground because, you have to like sit and think about the stuff to ask, and really, he was so incredible with us that, I mean, we really didn't have much to ask about.
Again, I think you just have to go with what feels right. You have to trust your gut. If you meet with a doctor and you ask all your questions and you're like, I'm not sure if this is a good fit for us, what's a good fit for Brian's not going to be a good fit for Kelvin, and it goes down the line. So you have to do what's best for you, what's best for your partner, and what's best for your family and your financial situation. So if an LA doctor's not in the budget for you, don't pick an LA doctor and set yourself back from Jump Street. So you just have to identify what your budget is, what you want it to look like, and know that you can have a color-coded spreadsheet like Sherman said he has, and I promise you, human nature is gonna blow that spreadsheet right out of your hard drive, because that's not how it works. So you have to understand that this is what it should look like, and this is what journeys could look like, and none of our journeys are the same, because with my first journey, and you'll see the twins I carried on the sign over here, they didn't have an egg donor when they matched with me. So we waited for 9 months for them to find an egg donor because they lost 3 egg donors. And finally, it was the 4th egg donor. And I waited with them for 9 months before that. And then when I matched with Brian over here, we did a fresh transfer with Hardy, and then his second child, Tallulah, she was created at the same moment as Hardy. So when we transferred Hardy into my uterus, Tallulah and the rest of her embryos got frozen in time. So when you think about it, it's kind of cool that they were created at the same moment. So it takes a lot of science, and it takes a lot of love, and it takes a lot of trusting your gut. So now we want to talk about what the pregnancy process looks like. How did you find out you were pregnant? Did your surrogate tell you? Did your egg donor did your clinic tell you? Did the agency tell you? Because I know for me, they were like, oh, the agency's gonna tell the couples when they're pregnant. And I was like, no, you are not. Like, this is my body, this is my uterus, this is my pee. My pee tells me I'm pregnant, and I'm gonna tell them. So we have a picture of the, I think, 14 home pregnancy tests that we took, because I was like, oh, is that a solid line? Oh, yep. And my husband's like, babe, it's the same pee that you're testing, so of course it's gonna be the same thing. So JC, let us know how you found out that your transfer was successful, and did you have any failed transfers leading up to that?
Okay, yeah, so we were very involved in the process. Our doctor was very hands-on as well. So as soon as we had a confirmed pregnancy, we knew we got we were called by our doctor, we were called by the clinic, and they confirmed our pregnancy. We did unfortunately have 2 failed transfers. That's one of the things about this journey, is that some of you will get pregnant on your first transfer, and some of you will take several attempts. So we did have 2, although they were grade A embryos, where science leaves off, nature has to kick in and do their part. So, but 3's a charm, and we got this little beautiful boy, and he was meant for us, we were meant for him.
And Kelvin, let us know how you found out that you were pregnant, and when did you find out it was twins?
So it was about a year ago now that we started the transfer. It was actually in February where we did the transfer. And we went into the process knowing that we were going to transfer 2 embryos because we wanted to try to do a twin journey. And then I believe, Alyssa, you had to wait 10 days before you would get your blood work done. And we were actually, it was a little frustrating because when she went to get her blood work done and she submitted it to the lab, it was like the Friday Thursday or Friday before President's Day weekend. And so the lab didn't catch it in time, and they told us they were going to give us the results on that Friday before they closed for the Monday President's weekend, but they didn't test it in time. So we had to wait the entire weekend, and we were just like on the edges of our seats, not knowing. Secretly though, Alyssa, she took a home pregnancy test and knew the results, but she couldn't tell us.
I didn't want to, and then have it be like a false positive.
Right.
You never know. The blood work is way more accurate than a stick, so
Yeah.
that's why.
So yeah, so we ended up finding on Tuesday that we were pregnant, and then following that, she had to go back into the OBGYN office to actually do an ultrasound to see if there was 1 or 2 heartbeats. So it was about 3 weeks after transfer.
And did you guys have first transfer success?
Yes. Yep.
Yep. There's a lot of that going on. Like I said, the spreadsheets don't work because if the embryo is not meant to be, it's not meant to be. So it's good to have more than one embryo created so that you have that choice. Not all of us get lucky enough to have first transfer success. And I remember with the twins I carried, it was first transfer success, twins, they were born at 38 weeks. Like it couldn't go any differently. And then when we transferred Hardy, the first blood test was on Christmas Eve. Like, you get the results and it's like, is it going to be exciting? If it's good, do I share? If it's bad, do I wait until after Christmas? Like, how does that work? So luckily with them, it's going to be what it's going to be. And I remember going into the transfer, his partner, Billy, was like, so what happens when this doesn't work, is what he asked the doctor. And my husband looked at him and he said, there's no what if it doesn't work. We got this. Yeah. And I'm like, no pressure, geez. And luckily it did work, and it worked how it was supposed to work. So just don't get stuck on what could go wrong. Just focus on how you're going to get through it and how you're going to make it the best possible way for you. So with communication, how much did you guys talk with your surrogates or IPs during the journey? Because I know me and this guy, I think he texts my husband more. He might like him more, but I don't know. We texted all the time. Like, I remember texting them one night, so my family wanted pizza for dinner, and I sat in the car, and I put crunchy peanut butter on top of a piece of pepperoni pizza and ate it, and it was amazing. And he sends me, like, the vomit emoji. But again, you're giving up so much control as an intended parent using surrogacy to grow your family that I wanted to make sure, like, that my husband had to hear it for both of our kids, so you're going to hear it too. Of course. Yeah. So, Alyssa, let us know what the relationship was like with Kelvin and what it was like before the transfer and during your pregnancy.
Okay, well, yeah, before the transfer, it really started with when I chose them, because I had, like I said before, the option to choose who I wanted to work with, so I made sure that it was someone that I was going to click with and that had similar communication as myself. And we talked a lot in the beginning, just with everything going on. I'm very open and just wanted to be honest and open with them with how I was feeling, what I was doing that day, how the injections were going, because that was very scary for me, having to inject myself, and they know that. Yeah. And then we did open texting and emails, and then as time went on, I'd send them videos of my belly and the baby is moving as time went further. So very.
Yeah, I'd say we talked almost every day, every other day in the beginning, and then it kind of slowed down during the middle of the pregnancy, and then towards the end when Alyssa was growing, we talked every day, and it was
a lot of appointments.
Yeah, there was a lot of appointments, and it was tough on our end because she's, growing our babies, and it's not all sunshines and rainbows. And we felt helpless at times because she was like going through pain or she couldn't sleep. And we're here in San Francisco and she's in Southern California. So we tried doing the little things that we could to help encourage her and keep her in a positive mood.
Yeah, they were wonderful.
So, but yeah, I'd say we had weekly video chats just to keep in touch.
We would do the video chats too.
Jimmy, can you let me know what your relationship was like with your surrogate before transfer and now that your baby's here?
Sure, absolutely. So, we have an amazing relationship with our surrogate and her family. Before getting into this, my husband and I had talked about wanting somebody who we can become lifelong friends with and an extended family, if you will. And before we transferred, we actually flew up. So we did a hybrid Canadian and a US journey. And so we actually flew up to Vancouver and spent some time with our surrogate and her family. And we just jived so well. It's just one of those things, that was meant to be. And I just remember vividly, we were sitting right where you guys were, and we were listening to the panel, and we're like, we remember that there was a couple and surrogate, and they're like, oh my God, we're best friends, we do everything together, and we're like, oh my gosh, we wish we could meet somebody like that. And we met exactly somebody like that. So, all in all, we're so lucky. To this day, we actually flew back up there to spend some time with them after the baby was only 1 month old. And throughout the journey, we flew up for every single appointment. So we had a really good relationship, and it still goes on to this day.
I think it's also important to remember that it's not just the couples and the surrogates that are involved in this process. As surrogates, we have husbands, and we have children, and we have childcare providers, and we have employers, and the surrogacy doesn't only impact our lives, but it impacts the lives of all of those people. So my husband's being told that me and him can't be intimate for 6 weeks before an embryo transfer to make sure that the embryo isn't ours that we're making. And when you get to a certain point, when I was pregnant with twins, he was like, you're on pelvic rest for the next 10 weeks. And my husband's like, you guys are awful. Like, what did we sign up for? And then it's your children as well. So when I was put on bed rest for 2 weeks when I was pregnant with the twins, it was relying on my mother-in-law to take care of my children, because at the time they were 5 and 3. So who's going to take them to school? Who's going to make their lunches? Who's going to take them to soccer practice? Who's going to do all of these things when mommy can't do them? So it's nice to know that it seems that all of these couples and surrogates were aware of that, but it takes a village to make a baby, and the village is also the support system that gets you through the moments that are hard. So when you're put on bed rest and your surrogate calls you crying, and they can reach out to the husband of the surrogate. They can kind of do what it takes to make sure that the surrogate's taken care of, so the baby's taken care of, so the journey's taken care of. So it's nice to know that my guys that I partnered with, they love my husband just as much as they love me, and my children are their children are my children, and it's just this love sesh that we all have going all the time. And again, that goes back to communication. So communicating when things are good, and communicating even better when things don't go the way that they should go, and knowing who to rely on. So if a wrench gets thrown in a system and I'm put on bed rest, and now this couple's responsible for paying lost wages because I can't work and my kids need extra daycare. So are you in a position to absorb that expense when it wasn't in your initial color-coded spreadsheet? So how do you handle that, and do you have the resources to do so? So Alyssa, we'll start with you. What was the impact on your family, and did they really come in to bat for you when things maybe didn't go as you thought they would?
Yeah, my family is extremely supportive, and I was open and honest with them from the very, very beginning. My dad was a little hesitant, naturally, but my husband's parents they're retired, and they were able to help with my daughter, who is almost 4, and she's a handful. My husband as well was on board with the whole process, and we know Ashley personally, we trusted her, and that helped a lot with the situation with my family and myself. And it was, and you guys were so supportive too, and
that was one big thing that even I was looking for, was does our surrogate that we're going to work with have a good support system? And we drove that point home with our surrogacy agency. We're like, we want to find a surrogate who, if she has to go to the hospital, that she doesn't have to figure out last minute what to do with her kids and be in a scramble. And so when we talked to Alyssa, her whole family was on board, grandparents were nearby, and so if it actually had to happen, because when we went into birth, it was a surprise. It was early, and so she had to drop off her daughter off at her grandparents, I believe, right?
Yep. So. Yeah, my water broke at 35 weeks, and it was the same date that she had a super important doctor appointment, my daughter, in San Bernardino, and we had to cancel that. I drove home to Murrieta to go to the hospital and dropped Emma off quickly. My in-laws took her for the weekend and worked it out with my husband as well, and
by 3:30 that afternoon, we had our kids.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, it was nice. And then also after the labor, I went home. I had a C-section, and Leah had to go to the NICU. So they were here for about a week.
Yeah, 1
And
week.
so it was nice. I pumped for them as well, which was nice to help their little immune systems. And they came to my house, and my daughter got to meet the babies, and that was just incredible. She even knows right now where I'm at and that the babies are here, and I'm going to show her pictures, and just really involved with the family.
Part of the hard conversations you have to have up front is, like she said, what does the birth arrangement look like? Who's going to be in the room? Are you going to be pumping breast milk? Do you get to see the baby after? Do your children get to be introduced to the baby? Because it's a huge thing. Like, I remember when I did my first journey, it was right when my oldest daughter started kindergarten, and I was 35 weeks pregnant with twins, so it was like hard to miss. Like, here comes Aubrey's mom. She's the size of Shrek. And kids would say, oh my gosh, Aubrey, your mommy's having a baby? Is it a brother or a sister? And she's like, no, we're not keeping them. Hold on, let me explain. Like, and so you have to. So I think as gay men who want to build your families through surrogacy, as gay men in general, you have your moment where you come out. You have your coming out moment. And I think as a surrogate, we get our own coming out moment. So your stories are profound, and they're some of my favorite stories, and I always feel bad asking about it. It kind of defines you as a person, so it's really cool to hear. But as a surrogate, we have to come out twice. So we don't get the moment where like, oh my gosh, you're pregnant? Like, no, I'm just fat. No, you are pregnant. And then you have the next moment of, but I'm a surrogate. And then you get all of those mixed feelings and those mixed emotions. Then you get to throw in the zinger, and it's for a same-sex male couple. What now?
Yeah.
And you kind of get to change people's lives with your story.
Yeah,
So a lot of times you get the, well, why would you do that? Or if God wanted them to have a baby, wouldn't he have given them a baby? Nobody, he gave them me. So you get to change people's lives with your story. And your story of wanting to have a family and wanting to use a surrogate, you're changing people's lives. And our children are changing people's lives. So now, when I did it the second time and then the third time, it's like, oh, your mommy's pregnant again. And my sister-in-law was pregnant at the same time as me when we had Hardy. And she was due, I think, 2 weeks before me. So when she started to show, my younger daughter went up to her and she was like, oh my gosh, Auntie, who are you giving your baby to? So, I mean, my youngest doesn't know what it's like to bring a baby home, but she really knows what it's like for mommy to be pregnant.
Yeah,
So
totally.
for her, it's just normal. So when they ask, like, oh, do you have any brothers and sisters? And she's like, oh, I have a sister, but my mommy also had 4 more babies, but we didn't bring those home. And the older she gets, the more she's able to communicate that. But your children are changing lives. Your future children are changing lives. And as surrogates, our children are changing the way the world sees the future. So if you have any concerns about what the relationship was like with a surrogate, and maybe you've never met one of us before, it's like, we're real people, and we want this for you probably more than you want it for you right now, because we know that you deserve it. So I want to talk a little bit more about the birth process and who was in the room, and did you watch the babies be born? And I know with C-sections, because I had one as well, when I carried the twins, I wanted the dads in the room, and I wanted everybody to watch them cut me open like a science project and pull babies out, and like, this is going to be fun. And the anesthesiologist said, you get one person in that room. So you have to decide, you have 3 baby daddies here, which one is it? And so I kind of left it, like, me and my husband talked, and I was like, I would really like you to be there, but these are their babies, let's let them decide. And so I let the 3 of them talk, and they decided that this is a big moment for me. And this is a moment that I've never had a C-section before. I've never had somebody cut into my abdomen, and I realized that they're not putting all of those, what are they called when you feel stuff? They don't put them all back together, so my belly's still numb. Nerves, yes. I'm not a scientist, I just make babies. And it was a big moment for me, and for me, I needed my husband there. And so they agreed that I should have him with me. If it's just one person, it's gonna be my support person. So I remember they did the epidural, and which is really weird because you go numb pretty quick. And I remember they had me back, and the doctors come in and they're like, Shelly, what do you need? And I was like, oh, you said I could have one person, bring my husband in here. And he comes in, and at this point I'm sobbing. And he's like, what's wrong? Is everything okay? And I was like, I thought you were missing. Oh. And he was like, relax, somebody put something in her IV, she needs to relax. So it's just identifying what that picture looks like. And like I said, we thought all the daddies would be in the room, and the grandmas, and we would be Skyping, and everybody in far away places was gonna watch this. So JC, we'll go to you, and then Jimmy, I'd like you to share too. Who was in the room when the baby was born, or babies were born, and was it how you thought it was going to be?
It wasn't, unfortunately. At the beginning of our journey, they were open for having us in the room. They wanted us there. They wanted us to experience the whole entire thing. Unfortunately, the day of, when we arrive at the hospital, we're greeted by the nurse, and the nurse says she's had a change of heart, and she just wants her husband in the room. So we have to respect that, right? It's her body. It's an uncomfortable situation to be in. Of course, we were heartbroken because we wanted to be there. The upsetting part is that we had to wait in the waiting room for a little bit, but Kaiser came in and they came through for us, and they set us up in the room that we were going to have when baby was born. We did meet them in the hallway. She was walking, and she explained to us it's not that she doesn't want us in the room during the laboring. She just didn't want us during the laboring, but that she was going to have her husband grab us as soon as she starts crowning and when she's getting close to the delivery. So, of course, we're on pins and needles. We're waiting all night long for that message of he's coming, he's coming, he's coming. We go outside to see the nurses, and we said, hey, any updates? We were told probably within the next 10 minutes or so. And all the nurses were pale. So we were like, what's wrong? And they said, something's not right. His heart rate dropped significantly, and they had to rush her in for an emergency C-section. Wow. So, of course, we're in tears. We're calling our mothers, thinking we went through this whole entire journey, and it can't end this way. At that point, they would only allow one person in the room, and it's rightfully so, the husband to be there. It's not our place to be there. So the husband was in there in the room with her. Nurse comes back out and says, he's okay. And he's okay. But we didn't believe it. You know, and we're crying, and they're saying, he's here, he's here, he's here. So that beautiful nurse grabs our cell phone and says, give me your cell phone. She runs into the OR room, and she takes a video of him. She comes back and shows us a video, and we see him crying, and he's okay. So that was our experience. Of course, we would love to have been there, but you know, it didn't pan out that way for us.
Can I add, it's integral to make sure that you do your hospital visit?
Yep.
Because the same-sex couple is different, the dynamics are different. If we didn't do our due diligence that day, when I said, listen, we have a baby coming, I need a room. I'm not going to stay in here with grandmas and aunts and cousins. We need that moment for ourselves with baby, because we fought for that. That was not something that just was going to be handed to us.
Yeah.
For those of you who didn't hear, JC's husband, Joseph, said that it's very integral to make sure that you do the hospital visit. Make sure you know what it's like. Talk to the social worker. Figure out what happens once the baby's born. Where do you go? Do you have to find a hotel room nearby? What does that look like? Are you staying with the surrogate? Is it a slumber party? So just make sure you check off all those boxes, do the hospital visit, and I think Brian has something to add.
Yes, but even after we did that, when we were going in for the birth of Hardy, you said, don't talk to the admitting nurses, don't talk to the admitting nurses, to Billy, and he's like, we need a room, we need a room. And she basically brings us to what looks like a broom closet. And she's like, well, we can put you in here, but if someone comes in labor and we need to see how dilated they are, and Shelly's like, I told you not to ask. And then the minute Hardy was born, the nurse goes, oh, come this way, we have a room for you, like we said on the hospital tour. So really, it's just kind of like, and also make sure that you talk to the right people, because some, you know, one person may not talk to another, and they just don't have an idea because they're an admitting nurse and they're not the pediatric nurse.
And it's good to know who to talk to and what questions to ask when you do that. Do they have a room for you? Is it a normal room?
Yeah.
The first time I did it, the couple had the room right next to mine. And then when we had Hardy, they had the room just 2 doors down. And then the third time we switched hospitals, and the hospital had a room called the baby bonding room, which is designed for families who build their families through surrogacy.
Yeah.
So Jimmy, share with us what your birth story was like, who was in the room, and what was the moment like when you found out?
Absolutely. So, you know, we were really fortunate. Our surrogate was type A personality, and she gave birth to one of her daughters at the same hospital that we gave birth to our son. So she already knew the lay of the land, if you will, and she went in there and she said, I want my IPs to be in the room. I'm not going to take no for an answer, you know, and we had talked about it, the 4 of us, that if if a medical emergency came up, then her husband would be in the room. But if the birth was a normal birth, then the IPs, us, we would be in the room. Unfortunately, only one of us could have been in the room during delivery. And so, my husband and I talked about it, and he said, well, this is really important to you. I feel like you should be in the room. And besides, he's like, I'm going to be in the viewing room right next to it with a window that I can see everything anyway. So it worked out really well. And, we had a planned C-section. The process was really quick, to be honest with you. Like, we were in the OR for probably 10-15 minutes, and then they had the baby, they held up the baby, and they said, here's your son. It was a beautiful moment. I got to cut his umbilical cord, wheel him to the next room where my husband was, weighed him, and then we went to the recovery room. And very fortunately, again, we had the room right next door to our surrogate, and so we had a couple days of bonding there as well. So it couldn't have gone any better, to be honest with you, and we were really blessed with our experience.
I think with my first surrogacy, like I said, my husband was my support person, and then it was the same hospital. So I had 5 babies at one hospital and 1 baby at another. But when it came time to have Hardy, it was the same thing. My husband's going to be with me, and it was fun because after the babies were out and they made sure everything was okay and they weighed them, and they're wheeling Hardy and the twins at the same time, not the same time, but at the same moment once all that's done, they wheel them into the recovery room, and that's where the dads are waiting. And for us, it was really fun because as the nurses are wheeling them, my husband gets to introduce the dads to their babies. And that was kind of just a moment that I'm really glad he got to have, because after all of this, like, it was the perfect end for us. And then when we went into the third journey, I said, this is it for me. Like, if you're done having kids, I'm done being pregnant. 5 pregnancies, 6 babies. My OB says, like, I'm a younger model, but I got a lot of miles on me. I think I smacked him after that, but that's all hearsay. So when they knew that they were done with their family, and the twins I carried for, they did not want any more after twins, I knew that I was done being pregnant. So I decided at that moment, like, if we're already having a C-section, why don't you just take my tubes out while you're down there? But that meant the Catholic hospital that I delivered 5 babies at will let me give a baby to a gay couple, but they will not take my fallopian tubes. I'm like, imagine that. So I was like, plot twist, guys, we're switching hospitals. It's going to be the same OB. Everything's going to be the same. And I'm kind of glad we did, because my first couple was international. The second time I wanted something different, and they were like, try a heterosexual couple. And I was like, that sounds awful. We're just gonna pick a couple that's closer. So I picked Billy and Brian, who are in LA. And so the third journey, it was kind of unique that the twist in that one was changing hospitals. But with that twist, that meant that the anesthesiologist there said, oh, they can all be in the delivery room. So I had my husband with me, and we had Billy and Brian, and there was the doctors and the nurses. It was like a circus. And I remember saying with Hardy, oh, it's such a good thing that Billy can't be in the room, because he sees my guts on a table, he's gonna pass out. But it came to the moment when this is your daughter's being born, and do you think you can do it? And he's like, I think I could do it. And those are my favorite photos, because that's the final piece of my Brady Bunch, my 6 kids, 3 boys, 3 girls, 5 husbands, a few grandmas. I just didn't get a maid in all of this. Like, where is she? So if there's anything else you guys would like to add, I know when you're going into this journey, like I said, you have an idea of what it should look like. So was there anything, Brian, that you had an expectation of, and now looking back, you're like, that probably wasn't as important, or maybe you should have put more energy somewhere else?
No, I have to actually say we were blessed, I think, having you being experienced doing this prior to us, that you were very open and communicative every step of the way. And the one thing that I just want to say to the room is, these are some of the most selfless women you'll ever meet in your lives. And, working with gay men, you get to they get to be cherished by all of us, and they're doing such a solid for all of us. So, as you go on that journey, just remember these women give up so much, and as well as their husbands and their families, and, talk to them and be open and be honest, because, they deserve that, and they deserve a lot more for giving us this opportunity.
Alyssa, is there anything you'd like to add from the surrogate's perspective? Just advice, maybe? Something that they can take with them when they start their journeys?
Yeah, again, honesty. Just be open to what your surrogate's going through and sensitive. And as well, kind of keep their families in mind too. That was important because they they have their own families. So honesty, it's simple. And find the surrogate that you click with as well, if you get that option.
I think she brings up a good point with sensitive, and it's something that I think a lot of us probably struggle with on a daily basis anyway. It's not what you're saying, or it's not the question you're asking, it's how you're asking it. Yeah. So just make sure that when you're asking the hard questions of like, do you really think you should be eating that? Or, hey, are you getting enough fruits and veggies? Do you have your vitamins? Like, just kind of form your questions to make it not seem like, oh my God, is she just eating ice cream all day? Or
And also, I think an important thing is remember that they have their lives, and when you go in and insert a part of your life, like, oh, I want you to drive an hour and a half to come see the OBGYN that I want to see you, that's hours that they spend in the car that takes A, away from their lives, but B, can, endanger the baby that they're carrying. So we got a great piece of advice from friends that did it and said, let them do the things that they would normally do if they were carrying go to the doctors that they would go see with their own children. Don't take them out of their everyday lives because, they have a system, they've done this before, you might not have. So you have to give them some trust that they know what is right.
Yeah, if I can add to that, because we were Facebook friends with our surrogate as well. So Facebook is a double-edged sword, right? In one moment you're scrolling and you're like, oh, she's walking in the park, he's getting fresh air. And then you see the double stuffed burrito that she's eating with a tub of ranch, and you start thinking, oh my God. But same thing, we chose, what we did, instead of having that conversation of like, maybe you shouldn't eat this, what we did was every once in a while, maybe a month and a half or so, we would go grocery shopping with them. And we would buy the veggies and we would buy the fruit and we would subliminally say, hey, you might want to choose this. So that's the route that we took.
Something as simple as travel. They had a random trip to Texas and we're like, is there a Kaiser in Texas? Like, in case God forbid something happens?
Yes, but also remember that there are some states where surrogacy, if they were to go to that state and have the child, you would then run into different laws of that state. Yeah. So in the state of California, both parents are allowed to be on the birth certificate because they've changed the birth certificates now to say parent 1 and parent 2. Although I think I'm the mother on Hardee's because they hadn't finished all that paperwork yet. And also, New York State is another one. Even though you can't be, there's no surrogacy. It's technically against the law. The New York State will put both parents on the birth certificate. So I think travel is one. I think Missouri, like someone had said, someone's going to Missouri, and Missouri doesn't, have surrogacy, and we would have had to then adopt the child if it was born out of state.
And I think it's good to say as surrogates, we trust our bodies. So if we think that maybe something's not going right, and I joined Men Having Babies just over a year ago, and I remember the executive director, Ron, was like, hey, Shelly, I know you're pregnant, but can you come to San Francisco? And this was San Francisco 2017. And so I called the guys and I'm like, hey, what do you think? And they're like, if your OB says it's fine, it's fine. So if you guys look back at the videos from last year, I was at this conference, 39 weeks pregnant with his child, and the doctor that got us pregnant was here, and so I looked at him and I was like, okay, so if you hear the rooster sound, it means it's going down, and you got me into this mess, you're getting me out of it. So it's just, like we said, trust, communication. Is there anything else the two of you dads want to add as maybe nuggets of advice or as they start their journeys?
make sure you jive really well with your surrogate and her family, because you're entrusting a lot to them, and it is, their body. So for us, that wasn't a problem, because we're gay men, what do we know? They've had 2 kids already, So we really entrusted them to do the right thing, and fortunately they did. So, but anything can happen, but just make sure you have that clear line of communication with your surrogate and the family.
Kelvin, anything to add?
I would say just focus on the big picture. The end result is that you're going to have a kid. There's going to be bumps on the road, either the doctor is late or an appointment is missed. You can't get upset over that. It's a very emotional journey. There was times where I was a wreck. My husband, he's a lot more strong than I am, and he was even getting emotional. But if you think about the end goal, which is to build your own family, and don't get upset at the little things, then you'll be great.
I think you guys all.
Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to just enjoy it. I actually ate dinner with my former IPs and my Cero baby, who's going to be 4 in July, last night. And we were reminiscing. Well, first of all, we ate at the restaurant where we first met 5 years ago.
Dating.
And we were reminiscing about all the good times that we had going through this process. Even the speed bumps that we hit along the way. It took me 3 times to get pregnant, and the first 2 times you feel defeated, you feel like a failure. But my family support, my husband, my IPs, they helped me through it, and at the end of the day, they have their 4-year-old.
Yeah.
If I could say something else.
Yes.
My only regret about this whole process is that I didn't start sooner. We're middle-class folks, right? And I know some of you will look at cost, and that might be somewhat of a deterrent. How do I afford this? This is your dream, right? So you do everything you need to do to make your dream come true. You eat ramen noodles for a year. You cut back on the Palm Springs trips and the Vegas trips, right? You do what you have to do. For us, we had some savings. We started a GoFundMe account. We reached out to our family and our friends, and we took out a baby loan. And we said, God forbid, our jobs go astray. They're not going to come repo our baby. So here we are. Right?
They can repo mine, though. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't put it back.
I think what's good to know about this, too, is you guys have such an opportunity this weekend. You have people that you can ask questions. You have agencies, you have clinics, you have attorneys. You get the chance to ask the questions, find the people that fit well for you. And this is the first step you're taking on the journey towards fatherhood. So this is going to be the first chapter in the birth story of your children. So take a moment to make sure you're making the right choices. Do what feels right. Follow your heart, but take your brain with you along the way. Know your limitations. And if a financial budget is one of your limitations, take it one step at a time. Yeah. Find your clinic, find your egg donor, make an embryo. Then you can pause. Yeah. Then once you're ready, you can find your surrogate, and you can do the legal contracts, and you can take the next step. But you can break this down so that it's possible for you. Yeah. And at the end of the day, we're not just surrogates and guys making babies. We're creating dads. We're creating aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents. And we're creating this ripple effect of love that you don't really think about when you think, I want to have a baby with a surrogate. So I think some of my greatest relationships are not only with the dads that I've helped, the relationship my husband has with the dads we helped, but it's the relationship with Hardy and Tallulah's grandma. It's the relationship with the twins' aunt. So just know that you're not in this alone. And like I said before, we want this for you. So if there's anything we can do, we're gonna do a few provider introductions, but this panel's gonna be here for a few minutes after that. Come and ask them your questions. Really take time in the expo later to find the providers that can help your journey. Like I said, what works for you is not going to work for the couple next to you, and that's how this all works. So follow your heart, trust your gut, have open communication, and just ask the right questions, and know that there's a fierce tribe of people who have done this that are rooting for you. So I wanted to thank my amazing panel for sharing their stories.